Super Media Bros Podcast is a founding member of the OddPods Media Network. Welcome to the Super Media Bros Podcast, where two best friends give comedically informative takes on movies, music, pro wrestling, and more. I'm Richie.
I'm Devin.
And this is Cult Cinema Saturday, episode 306 for Santa Media Bros 2023. Merry motherfucking Christmas. It is a Christmas. It is a Christmas Day release, which we do every year. So if this is your first time having Santa Media Bros, we traditionally will release our last episode of the year on Christmas Day. So this is our gift to you in the form of Ernest Saves Christmas from 1988. And anybody out there that doesn't know who Ernest is, it's hard to imagine anybody that doesn't know who Ernest is.
Me 2 hours ago.
But that's what I was getting at. It's hard to believe, but this was Devin's first Ernest movie, which a lot of people, I believe their first Ernest movie is either Ernest Goes to Camp or Ernest Scared Stupid. My first Ernest movie was actually Ernest Goes to Jail, which is the one that you remembered seeing pieces of like forever ago.
And not even pieces, dude. Like one of my buddy's dad had mentioned it. Oh, you got to watch these. You would love it, blah, 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 blah. And I was a kid and I found it on YouTube. Like, God, it had to have been like a decade and a half ago, maybe even longer. And I watched like, I don't even know how much of it. Genuinely, the last thing that I remember was he wrote up the wall on a vacuum or something, like some kind of office, I think.
It was a like a floor buffer.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yes. And I don't remember the circumstances, but basically it was like, all right, it's time to go. Come on. We're going to be late to whatever it was. So I was like, okay. And I just never got around to rewatching it. So I'd only watch, what would you say, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, and that was in the very beginning because that was Ernest Goes to Jail. He's a janitor at a bank, and he's wanting to become a bank clerk.
So does he have a different job in every movie?
Pretty much, but for the most part, okay, so in Ernest Goes to Camp, I promise we're going to get to Ernest Saves Christmas. In Ernest Goes to Camp, like he was a bus driver, and he wanted to be a camp counselor. That was his whole thing. He wanted to be a camp counselor. In Ernest Saves Christmas, he's a taxi driver. Mm-hmm. And this one doesn't necessarily have like, hey, I have a goal that I'm trying to reach necessarily. Ernest Goes to Jail, he wants to be a bank clerk. Ernest Scared Stupid, he is a sanitation worker. So Jim Varney portraying Ernest in these films, and you see this as the films progress, he's typically a janitor or a truck driver of some sort, which I think is great because the character of Ernest is portrayed as an everyman. He's kind of a knucklehead. He's kind of dim-witted, but he's like very much a I mean well type of character. Yeah. And he's very friendly, very pure of heart, dumb of ass. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of his shtick. And it's funny. The earlier Ernest films, including Ernest Saves Christmas, were all done via Touchstone Pictures. So Disney had the distribution for this. Ernest Scared Stupid was the last to be done by Disney. And then Ernest Rides Again, which was the one that had come out after that, was the last Ernest film to go to theaters because it tanked so badly. Ernest Saves Christmas, however, was the highest grossing Ernest film, and it's a lot of fun. I got to be honest, it's probably the one that I've seen the least amount of times, but I've seen it many times. Mm-hmm. And I always forget just how well done it is as far as for this character and for the subject matter. And it's a great family film, honestly. Like, and there are, like, I tried to explain this to you. Jim Varney has done a variety of roles over the course of his life before his passing in 2000. But Ernest is probably his most very well-known character. Just as a character, he started out doing commercials as this character, and then Ernest Saves Christmas being the second Ernest film. It's hard to imagine this character actually like taking a dip into the direct-to-video market because he was honestly such a staple of the late 80s and the very early 90s. What was your impression? Like, honestly, like I know that, again, this was like your first time watching the character. which I don't know if anybody's actually seen this one as their first Ernest movie. Typically, not a lot of people have.
Well, I mean, look at the age difference, though. But honestly, so there were a lot of questions that I had in terms of like, oh, what was this bit? Like, but based off of the reactions in the room from you and Puck and everybody, it's like, okay, so I recognize that this is an ongoing thing. And by the end of it, I was like, it reminded me of the first time I ever watched an episode of the Animaniacs. Because here's a weird thing, too. I watched the fuck out of Wacko's Wish. Hadn't seen the show until, like, it was on Netflix. I don't know if it was a time or if it was like Freakazoid, because I remember when Freakazoid was added to Cartoon Network, it just so happened that it was on the days in which I had karate practice. So I don't remember what the deal was with the series for Animaniacs, but it's like the first time I watched an episode of that, I was in college and I was like, huh. Within the first episode, you realize this is an ongoing joke, even though it's your first time seeing it. It just had that, like, I don't know how to describe it, but you just felt that where it was like, I don't know if I'm even making sense right now.
No, it makes sense. It's,
It felt like a live action cartoon, but in a good way, where it's like, this is just like when you sit down and it's comforting. It's, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, and the good part about Ernest is that you kind of can just jump in.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, because the character is very, I don't like to use the term simple, but he really is. Like, the character of Ernest is a very simple character where you get a read on who he is, kind of what he's about, and then you just fall into his mannerisms, you know, and things like that, because a lot of the jokes now, and I love this about this character, is like the more you dive into him and you watch like Ernest Film Festival, which contains all of his advertisements he did, you know, you find all of the Easter eggs throughout the movie where there's a scene where he's making pancakes and he's just throwing them in the air. And I literally didn't even fucking give it away because I wanted to see your reaction when they never came down, because you were just like, oh, every fucking time you would throw one, you were just, oh, like what? Like, I know you were waiting on something. And then he finally, a little bit later, probably like 2 or 3 minutes later into the scene, finally holds a plate and they just flop down in a stack neatly.
Even though like he was walking around the entire room, they all fell in place.
Right. Which is the best part. It came from, I want to say it was like a buttermilk ad that he was doing where he was making pancakes. And he does that. He throws them in the air and then he holds the plate out and they flop one at a time back onto the plate. Like I said, there's a ton of Easter eggs for longtime fans, but again, you can jump right in. The plot of this one, obviously, Ernest Saves Christmas, is, I wouldn't say it's unique. It definitely plays on the trope of like Santa Claus needs to find his successor, which we've seen in like the Santa Claus like a few years later, where it's like, Santa Claus, you gotta like find a new Santa Claus. But it also has the trope of, this guy thinks he's Santa Claus, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like that. It was
it was actually kind of clever. In fact, I'm kind of glad we're touching on that, because that was the other thing too. Is you had mentioned how simple Ernest is and everything. Honestly, like the more you watch it, the more you're like, he's not dumb. He's naive. He's touch of the tism, maybe? I'm not sure, but there's something about him where it's like, this is the dumbest motherfucker in the room, and yet he's always right.
He's not book smart, but he's very like common.
Right.
Like some of the common sense is there. It's very weird the way he works as a character, because there's spots where you're thinking, is he just not showing his whole deck of cards, as far as like,
that's what I kept thinking.
Yeah, like where he's definitely dim-witted.
Right.
But he ain't stupid.
No. It's almost like watching how Forrest Gump interacted with things, where you knew that he wasn't as quick-witted, but somehow he always came out on top. But it's like this was almost a parody of that, even though this came before that movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, 1988. Gump didn't come out until the 90s.
94, 93. Same year as A Mask, so whatever that was. Anyway, what an interesting character for some that on the surface seemed so, not even juvenile, just straight up churlish.
Yeah, and I can see how a lot of people would think that. But, I mean, he is a kid-friendly character for sure.
Right, yeah.
But what I was kind of conveying to you earlier when we were watching it is that he's not full-blown, let's hide the humor for the adults in the room. It's very subtle. Like some of the, like whenever he was saying what we have here is a failure, and you were just waiting on to communicate when he was saying, what we have here is a failure to accumulate. And I was like, this is great. Like,
right, because what it was I didn't expect the quote to actually be finished or even punned or anything like that. I thought that my just naturally ADD mind was just like filling in the gap, but it's like, oh, stop it. He's not doing it. And then he does the thing, and it's like, oh, well, shit, okay.
Yeah, and when I say adult humor, I don't mean like adult sexual or crude. I mean adult as in like
Advanced.
a child. Yeah, a child is not going to be like, a child's going to laugh because he said the wrong word.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to laugh because, yes, he said a wrong word, but he made a pun. And also the statement was having to do with him not accumulating the fucking money he was owed for the cab ride. So it was pretty goddamn hilarious. So to jump in, Santa Claus arrives in Florida, Orlando, and Ernest is a taxi cab driver, which the opening scene is hilarious whenever he's driving that one guy around trying to get him to the airport, which I think was a great introduction to this guy for you.
Yeah, because within like 10 seconds, I'm like, okay, I think I get it. I mean, we ended up finding out that there's a lot more to it than just, oh, he's kind of dumb. But I was like, okay, I at least understand his gimmick.
Right, and I was conveying, hey, pay attention to the camera angles, because the camera angles are such a big part of this character's humor, how like they shoot him from underneath sometimes, or they shoot him at like a Dutch angle where he's leaned in and there's some shadow on his face when he's doing some stupid like character work later on. But like that really lends itself to the delivery on the funny. Like when he's driving, he often is shot from like backwards and he's turned around not watching the road, and he fucking weaves in and out of traffic so hard that the passenger in the back seat flies out the car door, and he's literally frozen in fear because of Ernest driving. And so that's when we get the humor of this guy is just like frozen solid basically all the way to the airport. Goddamn, like Ernest pisses so many people off at this airport when he pulls up. Like he fucks this dude's bags up. He pisses off some people that he runs their bags over, and they chase him out of the airport. Meanwhile, the man claiming, which he is Santa Claus, like Santa Claus is giving some groundwork to the fact that he's forgetful. He's reaching an older age. He needs to find a successor. Enter, he needs a cab ride. Ernest is trying to get the hell out of Dodge, quite literally. And he's like, yeah, I'm your taxi. And he fucking like throws him in and just like hauls ass with him. And it's pretty great, actually. And we won't bore you to death with details, but he does convince Ernest almost that he's really him. It's not until he like actually finds his magic sack later. But he also comes across a young lady named Harmony Starr, who is kind of a con. She's a teenager. She's a runaway. She's kind of a con artist. She's kind of a dick to any and everybody. She's going to rip him off. She's going to like two-face the shit out of him. It's like, all right, you've got a really mean, well, knucklehead, bitch teenager runaway, potentially senile old man in a cab. This joke writes itself. I'm sorry.
Right.
Anyway, Santa Claus is trying to find a man named Joe, who is a children's museum worker, and apparently through a shit ton of trial and error, he's found, hey, this is the guy that I need to take over. Because Santa's 151 years old. But like shenanigans later is like he shows up. People think he's crazy. The talent agent that
not the kids.
Well, no. Of course not the kids. They know.
Well, that's the thing. That's one subtle joke about it that I really enjoyed, is that all of the kids recognize him right off the bat. And also, like, before I forget, you had brought up the Dutch angles and everything like that and all the close-ups. It's so weird. I can't explain why, but for some reason, I don't know if it's like the foggy memory of being a child, but old commercials, like old vintage commercials, when they did that shit, like for video games, for example, I know that was extremely popular in the 90s to do all those wild, really erratic commercials. It gives
like
me
all hand cam, pretty much.
Yes, it would always give me a headache. I can't explain why. Same, even though this is a cartoon, so it doesn't do that. Rocky and Bullwinkle would give me a headache as a kid too.
Yeah, because it was kind of. I can get that.
Like it was weird because like as a child you don't want to be bored, but then that was almost too rapid fire. But for some reason, even to this day, if I watch any of those things, I still get a headache. For some reason, Ernest Saves Christmas didn't bother me. Maybe it's because they actually did have pacing in it. Like that. Dude, the more I'm thinking about this movie, the more I'm like, look at that.
It ain't bad.
No, like, because you think about some of the gags and it's like, okay, some of these gags are advanced. But then some of them, it's like, this is the dumbest shit. This is like watching Good Burger or something.
In the best way. Like,
right.
The best aspect of Good Burger is how fucking stupid the humor is, honestly.
But it's like, the more you sit back and just analyze it from a filmmaking, and it just, I'm hearing myself speak on it, and it's weird, but the filmmaking artistry to this shit, I'm like, y'all actually knew what y'all were doing.
Yeah, and that's the fun part about Ernest is that it comes, and I think that encompasses like the character as well as the filmmaking. The character comes off, and the movie is supposed to come off pretty fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Like legitimate, like this dude's stupid. But it's really fucking not. Like that is a very thinly veiled curtain in front of what is actually very well thought out.
It is, and that's what's so weird is because like, you know, I'm not trying to sound like a hipster or anything, but I feel like if you tried to make the same movie today without it being a pre-existing IP, they just had this script collecting dust, they wouldn't have made it this well thought out. It would have been solely slapstick.
It would have been slapstick or vulgar, one of the two. Like, because they wouldn't be able to find a good middle ground because Ernest is not a vulgar character. However, Jim Varney is a good physical comedian.
Yeah.
When it was called upon, he was really good at it, but he was also very fucking quick-witted and funny. Sometimes he improv'd.
I was about to ask how much of that was improv because like he strikes me as an improv actor.
Not most of it. With Ernest, there are sayings and things like where he spent so much time as this character. Do you know what I mean? Like somebody who spends so much time as a character, like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, for instance, or Tony Stark, you know, Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark. You spend so much time as a character, Bruce Campbell as Ash. You just kind of, you know that character and you're just like, Jim Varney's like, Ernest would or would not say this. Or, yeah, Ernest would or would not do this particular thing for this other particular character or whatever. But he's a good character actor also, which comes into play a few times in this movie, which again goes back to the whole conversation we were having about he ain't dumb.
No.
So Santa Claus winds up, because of Joe's talent agent, who I need to point out, I could never tell, and I know you saw this shit, I could never tell which direction this man was looking because his one eye was looking at us, the viewer, by a complete fucking mistake. And the other eye was eyeballing the actor in question he was speaking directly across from.
Could you tell that on the old VHS?
No, because the quality was so
That's
fucking low.
That's what I was wondering this whole time. I was like, could people tell back then?
No, he was probably actually like counting on the low pixelation to hide that.
Modern technology fucked my mans up.
Big time. Modern problems require modern solutions in 144p.
Ooh, poor bastard. My fucking God.
he was both looking at his current talent and looking for a new talent at the same time. Fucking dick face, though. That guy was a chode. Fucking couldn't stand him.
Now, were these reoccurring characters?
No. Marty Brock and Joe are definitely not reoccurring characters.
Okay, so it's just Ernest and the two baggage claim dudes.
Yes.
Okay.
So Chuck and Bobby, yeah. So Chuck only appears like in 3 Ernest films, but Bobby has been in 5 or 6 of them.
Okay.
And then Vern is also a recurring character.
Right. Well, I didn't want to count that because you had told me off the air that you never see him.
He's still a character though. That's the thing.
Yeah,
is that,
that's
like
true. Yeah.
you like sit like, and I always say you like the audience. The audience is having to be Vern because we all have had somebody like Ernest in our lives when he comes in the house and he's
still deal with that.
It's great. We'll get to Vern in a minute, but like we've all known somebody like Ernest, and we've all been Vern at some point, which is kind of the gag of it all.
Mm-hmm.
But Santa Claus, because of Joe's piece of shit agent, gets fucking arrested because they're like, hey, this guy thinks he's Santa Claus. Put him in jail because why the fuck not? Like, really? Is that our answer?
And then whenever Ernest later says, Santa's in the slammer, Santa got busted, just those lines alone, I'm like, what the fuck am I watching?
The way that he looks off and has that, like, you know what I'm talking about? That off stare for a minute.
Yeah.
He's like, like he's got to think for a minute. He's like, Well,
I got to do something.
And this is where it gets interesting. Ernest goes through, I want to say, I've seen many of his films. This, I think, is one of them where he does the most. It's only outdone by Ernest Scared Stupid in this regard, which I would love to watch with you for Halloween next year.
Okay.
So Ernest poses as a state government official, like assistant, to bust Santa out of prison or jail. And Harmony is playing like the governor's niece who is in a program to learn about all this shit. And somehow it works because Jim Varney just disappears into literally whatever he chooses to be, whether it is this character or a snake wrangler, like a very hick snake wrangler, or literally an old lady in a walker with humongous bowling ball titties and a neck brace. And it's funny as fuck.
I hate to admit it, but the old lady one would have got me.
Because he was good at it?
Yeah, like I would have believed it.
That's how good Jim Varney was, though, dude. So, like, he rolls in there and they get Santa Claus out of this bitch, right? And then he goes again. Like, as the old lady goes again, like, to do some fuck shit. And I'm dying the whole time because it's like we hit this stride in the movie where it's one of these after the other.
Mm-hmm.
The way that he's trying to get Joe and Santa Claus in the same room together because Joe only ever heard part of Santa's pitch to him at the Children's Museum before he got busted and arrested, which they improperly refer to him as Santos because they can't ever let him just fucking finish his sentence.
Dude, that was one of those stupid jokes that I kept Googling at because I was like, that's actually... Yeah, that's kind of clever. I like that.
And it's something that would probably really happen?
Absolutely it would have. I think that's why I enjoyed it, because I was like, they're doing so many things I wouldn't have thought of, but is still staring right blankly at you.
And along with all of that stuff, which I loved your interpretation, the way that you talked about this as a whole. I think within the first 15 minutes, you were just like, I get it. It's kind of like a little bit of like live action Looney Tune gags.
Yeah.
Smartly, though, it's kind of what they do. I mean, there's the whole sequence where the dock workers are offloading the boxes from the plane and Bobby gets squished underneath one of the boxes and fucking Chuck is just like, breaks over, squish. Mm-hmm. And then later you see him still stuck to the box being transported across the airport runway. It's fucking funny.
Right.
Next thing you know, somebody's gonna like bust through a wall and like have a fucking full ass like cutout outline of them, like, you know what I'm saying? So Ernest is trying to get Joe and Santa in the same room, which is Joe is. You can tell that he has done like this children's role his whole life. So when his agent tries to get him into a horror movie, which you don't know it's a horror movie until later on, he can't say the line "son of a bitch" because he's too pure of a person. Which, you know, that's why Santa Claus is choosing him. So he gets him onto the film property by being a snake rancher. And Jesus Christ, dude, it is the funniest thing where you're like, oh, hey, get all knotted up and twisted in there. Like I'm talking like Jim Varney is just a filthy fucking vagrant looking guy in this scene. Like he's got suspenders, a fucked up hat. Like
somehow he randomly was missing a tooth. I don't know how he pulled that off.
He blacked out that tooth.
Is that what he did? Okay.
Yeah. He would do that quite often, actually. Like when he would do that kind of shit, he would just black the tooth out and just.
Was it with a Sharpie? Like what? I've seen this done, but I've never seen the act of it happening. Like, how do they do it?
It's like toxic free makeup.
Okay.
Like it's not shiny. It's very matted. That way it looks like, yeah.
That's why I was always wondering how that worked. Okay.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Huh.
So basically that's why he's trying to get him in there, and which is funny because like once he does get him in there, he winds up actually having real snakes dumped in the back of his truck, and he's just like he's flipped out. But Joe is having second thoughts throughout the entirety of this movie, where he's just like, I don't know if I want to do like not the Santa thing, but like, you know, pursuing like a real acting career, because I forgot to mention that his television show as the children's host is canceled. So he's got to get another job. And that's what this is. But he's been having conflict about taking on the role of being the new Santa. And meanwhile, while all this is happening, Harmony is wrestling with her own kind of bullshit. Like her parents didn't notice her because they were too wrapped up in their own drama and bullshit. She ran away. She's kind of like not a delinquent, but like you can tell that she's hurting, man, and she's acting out about like, fuck this, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna steal Santa's sack with all his fucking magic toys in it and shit. Even though I don't believe in him, I'm gonna fucking steal this entire sack with magic in it. That's the only thing about this movie. I think I was just like, okay, you don't believe, but you're gonna pull all this would-be wishing for money out of this fucking sack.
Right. Like, even if it's not working for you, it's still like, okay, well, how many items do you have to see transform from a glowing orb into an item that was not originally in? Like, that alone should have tipped you off. Also, like, is it me or like whenever she was about to board to go to Miami and she was talking to those kids and everything, it would have been nice if like in that moment she pulled out the correct item and gave it to the little girl.
That, or she pulled out the item that she originally wished for.
I kept thinking about it, the baseball mitten.
Right, because there is at one point Santa Claus like kind of out loud points out to her the reason she, quote, doesn't believe anymore is because he brought her a doll instead of a baseball glove.
That was I expected that to happen at the end. I was surprised it didn't.
Yeah, now that I've like gone back and rewatched it again, yeah, I'm surprised at that shit too.
I wonder if it was in the original script, but they just cut it out for time restraints, maybe?
I don't know. This was an hour and 35-minute film, dude.
Yeah,
like,
but
it was,
most comedies back then weren't particularly long.
I mean, true enough.
Hey, I'm Hansel Aaron from the BFYTW podcast, here with my buddy Stevie.
Hey, what's up?
And Augie.
Hey.
And we're here to, first of all, categorically deny the rumors going around that all we've been doing lately is copying other podcasts. This is categorically untrue, and we deny it completely. Having said that, please enjoy the rest of the Super Media Brothers podcast. And when you're done with that, feel free to check out our new project, Ultra Telecommunication Siblings, a show where best friends give informatively comedic takes on music, gaming, pro wrestling, movies, and more. Pretty sure that's never been done before.
I think this is where we come across the helper elves, which is a funny running gag with dock workers because
Really?
because Chuck and Bobby were sitting there the whole time being like MV.
Oh, I thought you meant the elves come and go throughout the series.
Oh no, I'm talking about like whenever they're sitting there. So that says that's a V. That's an M. V M V. No, right. That right there is an M. Helper Elms, and I'm sitting like fucking face palm like motherfucker, dude.
Illiterate sons of bitches, man.
He is the illiterate son of a bitch. Like, goddamn.
How do you mistake the two?
When the older guy is right.
Yeah.
I don't mean it like, oh, he's older and has more experience. No, Bobby old as fuck, my guy. Bobby done had a crate dropped on him. Should have fucking stroked out underneath that bitch, but he's sitting there, V.
He probably did have a stroke. How many, like, coherent sentences did he say?
That's the thing about Bobby, though. Bobby's character rarely speaks in any of these movies, which makes it funnier when he does, because typically if he does speak, it's something like, no, that's this.
So he's Ferb.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Good one there. That's very good, actually. But anyway, the elves fucking actually show up at some point, which the reindeer have all come out of the crate and are stuck to the ceiling.
Bruh, it just dawned on me now that I've brought up Phineas and Ferb and everything, and we brought up, as we were watching it, several different things throughout this movie that, oh, that reminds me of this or that or whatever. My guy, hear me out. The Ernest movies, watching this and pondering it after the fact is like the first time I watched The Godfather. And I was just kind of like, oh, that's where they got this technique from, or that's where this story beat came from. Oh, that's where this quote, it so much makes sense, weirdly enough.
Know what I mean, Fredo?
Dude, even that, I was like, oh, there's a guy I work with. Every 5 seconds, he'll say that when he's talking to you. And I just thought that this man was slow. I just thought he was kind of, because he's old as balls. So I just thought he was senile and
old as balls.
Well, dude, the thing is like, me and some of the younger ones are like, dude, he's like a fucking doll. You pull the string and he's got like 5 sayings. And it's on repeat the whole time. He's fucking with us. I'm starting to get it now. He's a fucking troll. God damn it!
You done figured him out.
Fuck! This is so wild.
Right.
The Ernest movies are, so weird.
I love how much you're just having like a pre-midlife crisis across from me over Ernest and just making some realizations about people in IRL. You know what I'm saying?
In real life and in film. Like, I'm just, like I said, I'm realizing, oh, so this is like I said, The Godfather to all these different plot lines or gags or anything.
Yeah, in a way.
Huh.
Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah. But the reindeer come out. The elves fucking show up. Ernest has busted this man out of prison. Joe has the realization on set, which Santa Claus visits, by the way, the movie set, whenever he cannot bring himself to cuss on set when he's about to shoot this Swamp Thing looking fuck that busts into the room on that movie set.
Oh, that was old Greg, and you know it.
It was old Greg. He done had a downstairs mix-up and everything. He was busting up in that fucking house looking at Joe. You ever drink Bailey's from a shoot? It's like, bitch. But Santa Claus busts the fucking director in the face for making a movie called Christmas Sleigh, which I want to say I actually made a joke about doing a movie called Christmas Sleigh a couple of episodes ago. However, after punching him, I was like, God damn. They're in an office later discussing signing Joe to a deal for a few of these movies. Bro, that director had a big old fucking shiner from that dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm talking like Santa Claus, like, I'll beat that shit out of him. It looked like he fucking he punched him once. It looked like he'd whooped his ass in a fucking UFC fight or something.
Got the cauliflower ear.
He fucking did. fucking Santa just fall on the ground. It's like, God damn, beat his ass. Anyway, he has a change of heart completely. Like Joe almost just, he wants to believe, but he's like, I don't know if I do believe, until he sees Ernest, who is taking the reindeer with the elves, and he's flying the sleigh because he's like, I gotta fucking get this to Santa Claus somehow, because I done busted my fucking tires on this rider truck that I was driving, because why not? So Joe sees Ernest flying this bitch, and he's like, oh, well, I guess it's real. I was like, he didn't say it like that, because it would have been pretty fucking funny if he was like, well, I guess it's real, and just fucking like leaves. He's like, fuck this. But he pretty much is just like, yeah, fuck this, I'm out of here. And God damn it, man, there's a lot of Ernest flying the sled around. A lot. Like, I'm talking, this fucker goes to outer space in this bitch.
Yeah, thinking about it now, I'm like, how much of this budget was dedicated to these sequences? Or they got approved for the budget and they were like, well, shit, now we got to make it happen.
What do you think the budget for this was? That's the question.
Okay, so it was 88.
Yeah, the movie did come out, for those of you out there, November 11th, 1988. So this is a fucking old movie. This is like a 36-year-old film about.
So for me to better answer that, how big of an IP was this at the time?
I wouldn't say that it was the biggest IP, but it was, put it to you this way. The IP was well known enough that this is the second Ernest film.
Fair enough. That's what I'm trying to figure out. 6?
6.5, yeah.
6, okay.
Yeah, because the budget was 6.5 and it grossed 28.2. In 1988, that's good numbers.
No, it is. I'm just like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I feel like that's partly to do with it's a holiday film. Most people are going to see holiday movies anyway and shit, but...
What was the release date?
November 11th.
Okay, good choice, because normally so many of these holiday movies, whether it's Halloween, Easter, Christmas, they always want to release it on the day of, and I'm like, okay, I, as a human being, don't want to see a Christmas movie on the 26th. If you release it on the 25th, 9 out of 10 times, the day after the release, it's obsolete. So, good job.
Yeah.
You see that so often, though. I understand the appealing marketing strategy, but in hindsight, it's like, this doesn't work.
No, and this one 100% did.
Right, yeah.
So, Harmony, we mentioned a little bit earlier, is at a train station to leave for Miami, where she's been wanting to just completely run away. She has deceived Ernest, who doesn't, he likes her. He doesn't fully trust her by the time it comes around that she's swapped the magic sack with a sack full of feathers. Santa Claus keeps coming up short on everything. She finally has a change of heart after seeing these children, at the train station. And we're just like, oh, what is she going to do? Finally, Joe and Santa Claus meet and he transfers the power over to him. She shows up and she's apologizing to Santa, like having a whole ass moment where she's crying and shit. She's like, I even called my mom. I'm going to go home. Ernest finally, after his, God, how long would you say that sleigh bit happened? Maybe 5-6 minutes?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty well dedicated amount of time to it, which is pretty funny though, because it's a lot of camera trickery and a lot of simple computer generated imagery back then, and a lot of humor, because it's mostly Ernest. I need to pull they're like, pull the brakes or don't touch that, and the poor bastard just can't catch a fucking brake for anything except for breaking all the goddamn handles off of the control panel. Son of a bitch, that poor son of a bitch, just he is out of control. My guy is completely out of control. Outer space, dive bombing. Fuck, man. But I love the line delivery whenever he's pretty much a fucking 90-degree angle, like
Yeah.
straight up in the goddamn air. He
Yeah,
comes
just going straight down.
Yeah, and they stop right before they hit the ground. And he just like breaks the which that's another like running Ernest gag is that he breaks the fourth wall quite often in these movies. He just looks at the audience, just like air brakes.
Yeah.
Like, you stupid fuck, I love you.
Dude, that's the thing though, is we keep saying stupid, but he was the one that knew that old girl was gonna steal the fucking sack. He knew like all the ways to get in and out of these scenarios. Really, everybody else is a dumb one.
That's very true. Santa Claus is magic and still got put in fucking prison.
But also look at all the times that he was incorrect about his judgment calls.
Well, he does mention, and I'm only slightly defending that, like, he's old. Like, he's even admitting, like, he's like, fuck, I have to take notes for certain shit. I'm getting children's gifts wrong. Because at one point, when he's trying to pay Ernest for the cab ride, he's got play money, but he's just like, oh, last year this kid wanted, like, it's literally like the name of the money. Like, he's like, he wanted this fun time playhouse thing with play money. I must have mixed my actual money up with this. And I'm thinking, bro,
parents are doing
ballin'.
That would have been such a good little Easter egg side gag. Is if later on in the movie, after he said the kid's name, you see this giant billboard of the whole family. Like
just rich as fuck.
Yeah, like they're poolside. There's like 4 or 5 cars in the like U-turn or something. Like they have a horseshoe driveway. Like little things like that would have been great.
And you know what is even more fucked up? I know it's like a little bit of a side tangent, but why not? It would be funny about that is that not only is it Santa Claus's money, but it's Santa Claus's money. You think that money ain't magic and just keeps multiplying? Where's he getting money from in the first place?
Well, that's the thing too, is like, it always blows my mind in these movies. This is a cliche in this movie, Elf, basically every movie in which Santa Claus is a real character, but none of the adults believe in him. I always stop and go, where do you think these gifts that you didn't purchase came from?
And it's often a shitload of them.
Yeah, like, I don't understand that trope.
You got me. We get the happy ending where Joe's like, he accepts his role. Oh, and he makes it snow because at the very beginning, Seth Applegate, who is the original Santa Claus, showed up at the airport in the beginning of the film. And the man that he was speaking to was just like, oh, I wish it would snow in Orlando. It would feel like a real Christmas back at home. And it's like, yeah, that might be a fucking thing. Then they make it snow, or he makes it snow. And he takes Harmony and Ernest on the sleigh ride with him. However, we go back to the dock workers. And they're having another goddamn argument. It's just like, that's an E. And it's like, this time he's right. This time's the time that Chuck is right.
Yeah.
And it's the fucking Easter Bunny, dude. And there's a couple of gags that like, they end on a gag, but there's a gag earlier in the movie where the reindeer foot kicks out of the box and then Chuck lets this screech out, like long screech. And then Bobby, without blinking, without changing his face, is right there and ready with a fire extinguisher. And you just hear, and
I just want to know, what did he think was going to come out of there that required a fire extinguisher?
I don't know, but it's pretty fucking funny if you think about it. It's like, I don't know, whatever this is, I don't give a shit. It's getting the fucking fire extinguisher.
Stupid motherfucker.
I know, dude. He's like, because he's so old, he's just like I feel like Bobby's internal monologue sounds something like Boomhauer.
Yes.
Like, for real, dude. He just said, that dang old reindeer about to get this motherfucking fire extinguisher. Goddamn.
Dude, that's so fucking accurate. You know what? This whole movie feels like, yeah, everybody in here seems like side characters.
Isn't it amazing, though? Like, because you could really say that, hey, the main character in this movie is Santa Claus, or like the main character is Joe. The main character is
they all have an arc.
They really do, and I think that's fascinating because more often than not, that's typically the case with an Ernest film, only with like the first, this one, and Scared Stupid. There's a lot more focus on Ernest himself in many of the other ones, but I think that's a reason why I I love. Even Ernest Goes to Jail is some kind of way with that. And I think that's a big reason why I enjoy the first four. But that was the end of Ernest Saves Christmas, where Santa Claus takes off at 7 p.m., which they were trying to get to his fucking deadline, to deliver all the gifts on Christmas. And it ends with the dock workers with the Easter Bunny. But I really feel like that was the magic of the first four. Mm-hmm. And not long after Ernest Rides Again, I think we only got like 4 more Ernest films. I want to say there were like 9, maybe 10 altogether. I'm looking this up because I don't want to be wrong, because Ernest had like quite a bit, because like in our video store we had every goddamn Ernest movie that ever came out.
Christ.
Okay, so there are 9. If you go in order, it's Goes to Camp, Saves Christmas, Goes to Jail, Scared Stupid, and then Rides Again, which were the theatrical releases. Now the direct videos were Ernest Goes to School, Slam Dunk Ernest, which is with Kareem. That one's kind of fun. It's with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Ernest Goes to Africa.
Stop.
No, for real. And Ernest in the Army. Ernest in the Army was the very last Ernest film. And it's kind of sad because Ernest, as the character, was always a very physically demanding role for Jim. And he died of lung cancer.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, Jim was a very heavy smoker, like big time, dude. In fact, if you listen to him talk normally, very deep, very raspy voice. Like the fact that he spoke the way he did as Ernest, you could tell it was full blown a character.
Mm.
And Ernest in the Army had come out in 1998 and he passed away in 2000. So he was still doing all these roles up until his death, like still fighting, lung cancer.
You say that it's not surprising that it's a character voice. To me, it is, because keep in mind, what's his other big role? Slinky. And it's basically just the Ernest voice.
I mean, in a way, yes, but also Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, but that's a very vague memory for me. So, like, my 2 ideas of this actor is more or less the same voice. So, I just assume that that's how he talked.
Well, Jim was from Kentucky.
Okay.
So he was definitely Southern. Like, he was absolutely like a Southern person. He just like leaned into it so much more. He's been in a slew of other movies aside from just the ones we've mentioned before. Like, that's kind of how I want to end it. Like, if anybody out there would like to check this movie out, it is on Disney Plus, which, fantastic, by the way. Check out Jim's other roles, like, legit. He was in we reviewed a movie forever ago called Fast Food, where he plays Wrangler Bob, and this is him being like owning a burger chain, and it's fucking funny as shit, actually, like seeing him in this role. He was in that. He was in Snowboard Academy. A lot of people probably don't remember it, but it's an older, like I say older, by today's standards, it's older. It's 30 years almost. It's a 1996 movie. It had Corey Haim in it, one of the 2 Coreys. He was in the 4th Three Ninjas movie, the one with Hulk Hogan.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, he was Lothar Zog in that movie. And he was also Jebediah in Atlantis, The Lost Empire from 2001. That was his very, very last film role.
Wow. Okay.
And then he had different roles throughout the 90s. Well, I mean, he had a lot of roles in like the fucking 80s and shit, but he did he did a couple of episodes of Roseanne. He did an episode of Duckman. He did an episode of Hercules, The Simpsons, and Bible Man Jr. Do you remember Bible Man?
They have a junior?
Yeah, like that. You remember Bible Man though, right?
Of course.
Yeah. He played himself in them. Yeah.
Is it as, I don't want to say good, but is it what I remember the original to be?
Only one way to find out. Tune in next week when I'm totally
Dude,
fucking kidding.
You know what? By now, that IP has to be in bankruptcy. There's no fucking way.
That Bible Man?
There is no goddamn way, pun intended, that motherfucker was smart with his investments. There's no way. I want to buy the IP and make my own movie.
My guy, the first release of The Bible Man, 1995 to 2020.
So it's dead.
I hope so.
Okay.
Fucking hope so.
Okay. I will be locating some email addresses and I will let you know how this goes.
Please get back to me. If you can somehow secure the rights to Bible Man, let's please fucking do this next year.
Oh, dude, if I can secure the rights to Bible Man, I'm not living down here anymore. I'm leaving. I'm making it big, baby.
You're going to go live in Joel Osteen's Christian mansion in Houston. Jesus Christ.
Hey, at least I'll open the fucking doors if there's a flood.
That's right. Devin is way better of a human than Mr. Osteen. Fight me. Jim Varney won a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Performer in a Children's Series for Hey Vern, It's Ernest, because that was a television series.
Oh, wow.
It was very good. He also was nominated for a Golden Raspberry Award for fucking Worst New Star for Ernest Goes to Camp, which he did not win because he is better than that, and you know it.
Well, that's what's so interesting to me is that, like, it's such a beloved thing. I would have thought that it would have been shitted on. Just because it's like I said, on the surface, it's easy to be like, oh, it's one of these. But then whenever you actually do take time to analyze it, it's like, okay, I'm actually impressed.
Yeah, dude, the Ernest character is very well loved by so many people. And it's because he's just an everyman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we've mentioned various times throughout this podcast episode, he was created as a national products character. He's advertised for the Coca-Cola company, Chex, Taco John's. He's done shit for car dealerships. he's done all kinds of stuff, dude. But anyway, yeah, that's Ernest Saves Christmas. Again, I would love to visit more of these, considering the fact that this was your first. Goddamn, I want to do more of them.
Yeah, I'm down.
It'd be fun to do like an actual, like an Ernest, not like a whole month of it, but it would be fun to like maybe like every month, every other month, do one of his movies like in succession. You know what I'm saying? Like just to revisit the character, really. That
or a ranking episode.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. We'd be sitting down and doing them all, but I really feel like the ones worth like sitting here on this, like they're all worth sitting here and talking about, but for sure the front four originals like from Disney like would be fun to sit with and just bullshit on. You can listen to past, present, and future episodes of the show by visiting supermediabrospodcast.com. You can leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and Podchaser. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. That's a thing. Go to YouTube and subscribe to us. Leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube if you're listening to us there. Just go down and scroll and tell us what you thought about Ernest or what you think about Ernest. What's your favorite Ernest movie? Fucking tell us. Is there an Ernest movie you'd specifically like us to talk about? Talk to us.
Yeah.
Well, I can't fucking believe it. That wraps up an entire year. Thank you guys for hanging out with us for the entirety of 2023. We will be back in 2024 with a bunch of bullshit for you motherfuckers. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. This has been Ernest Saves Christmas. We'll be back in 2024. But until then, I'm Richie.
Yeah, I'm Devin.
Shades on.
We're off.